Remember that detox pathway that I talked about, that detoxification, how your liver has to process these EDCs through phase 1 and phase 2, and then they have to move through your bowel and kidneys to actually leave your body? Well, most detox products on the market are incomplete. They might support one phase of liver detox, but not both. Some do support both, or they support the liver, but they ignore the gut. And that's why we add back on track into the mix. And welcome to Vitality Radio, the podcast that helps you make sense of natural supplements and thrive without pharma drugs. I'm Jared St. Clair. I grew up in a health food store and spent over 40 years now figuring out what works and what doesn't, so that you can make confident, informed decisions about nutrition, supplements, and your health. Welcome back to Vitality Radio. I'm Jared St. Clair, and if you listened to our episode just 3 days ago, you know we dove deep into endocrine-disrupting chemicals and how they are hijacking your health. So let me do a quick recap in case you didn't listen, but with a note saying, please go back and listen. Listen to that episode. It will make this episode make a whole lot more sense. These really need to be listened to together and optimally in order. So I would throw a pause on this one if you haven't listened to the last one and give it a listen, because it'll all make much more sense. And as a package deal, you're going to love these episodes. I really believe. We've already had a couple of great emails and conversations with listeners just from the show that just aired. And I anticipate that there will be a lot more people with a lot of excitement about what we're talking about. Certainly, I am excited about it. Jen is excited about it. Our team is excited about it. Let me give you a recap real quick. If you did listen and it's been a few days, or maybe you're not listening when this airs and it's been a week or two, you know how it is. Time flies, right? So part 1, we talked about the endocrine disrupting chemicals and what they are, how they're wreaking havoc on your hormones. We covered the 3 main mechanisms of destruction, including one that people don't talk about nearly enough. First one we talked about was thyroid disruption, then sexual hormone chaos, and then the neurotransmitter connection, where people just simply don't think much about things like dopamine and serotonin and melatonin when it comes to endocrine disruptors. We talked about why your standard blood tests aren't catching any of this, even though you know something isn't right with your health. And then we got into the calcification crisis, how fluoride and misplaced calcium are literally hardening your endocrine glands, your pineal gland, your arteries, and how this is creating a perfect storm of hormonal dysfunction. We ended by talking about the calcium paradox, how people are taking calcium supplements and or getting them from extra calcium from their food. And while they're not necessarily seeing a lot of bone density improvements, they are finding much soft tissue issues. And we went all into that. And I even introduced you to a big part of that solution, which is vitamin K working with vitamin D3, boron, and silica. Today, I'm going to give you the detoxification portion of our protocol. There are 7 total formulas that will be in our protocol when it is fully launched last year. As a listener to Vitality Radio, you kind of get the sneak peek, the sneak preview of the detoxification formula. Some of you have already tried them, the Liver Vitality, the Back on Track, the K2D3 formula, and of course, Endo Cleanse. Many of you have heard me talk a little bit about it. And now we're going to dive deep into each of those 4 formulas, which are the detox portion of the protocol in the first quarter of next year when we launch the boosting portion of the protocol, the formulas that will boost production of hormones and neurotransmitters and optimize things there. We will dig deep into those. But for now, it's all about the detoxification. And I can't think of a better time to do it right around the holidays, where things are kind of chaotic, stress is high, diets aren't necessarily so good. So doing some detoxification right now, and especially leading into the new year, make all kinds of sense. So I'm introducing you to the first 4 products of the protocol, which are the detoxification products. The remaining 3 products, the hormone boosting formula and all that, we will launch next year. So I do things a little differently on this show. If you're a regular listener, you know I tend to try to keep things somewhat high level so that they're easily understood. but also dig a little deeper than probably a lot of shows like this do. And there's a reason for that. Some people say, lots of people say, and I wish they wouldn't say it as much, Jared, just tell me what to take. And you know what? I will. If that's what you want me to do, I will. That information will be in this show. But what I hope to do is empower you with a true understanding of why what you're taking works. There's so many reasons for that. One, if you have an understanding of what it's doing, you know what to look for in terms of your results. And you know what tweaks you might need to make to get even better results. Two, you can explain it to others, maybe even your doctor, if you're working with a doctor when it comes to this. You can share it with others, I hope, and spread the word about what we can do to optimize hormones and neurotransmitters through natural detoxification. And I simply believe that as a society have offloaded our healthcare onto other people, and we need to take it back. It is our responsibility to optimize our health and no one else's. And my goal on Vitality Radio is simply to help you become an educated consumer of supplements so that you know what you're doing and know what you're buying, why it's working, how it's working, and what to expect from it. So that's what this show is all about. We're going to dig into all four of those formulas. And first, we're going to talk about a little bit more on the detoxification side and how exactly these chemical intruders, these fake hormones, these endocrine disrupting chemicals get out of the system through natural means. So detox protocols are out there. There's lots of them. And these detox protocols that are on the market, these products that are specifically for endocrine detoxification, that are for optimizing estrogen levels and testosterone levels and things like that, they're all out there. But I really think there are so many areas that they are missing. I was reading through an email from someone who was listening to the previous episode and asked a question about another formula that she is currently taking. She's a postmenopausal woman. And I answered that email right before I jumped on this show. The formula she was taking, there's nothing wrong with it. In terms of the ingredient profile, it's pretty good. But in terms of the concentration and potency, I felt like it was about half of what it probably should be. They were trying to keep it simple. And I appreciate that. It's one formula that is supposed to be basically one part liver detoxification and one part endocrine disrupting chemical detoxification. But by trying to build it all into one formula, in my view, it's just not enough of any of it. It's about 50% of what it probably should be. So if you doubled the dose, it might be a pretty good formula. And when Jen and I were talking about this, and we talked about a protocol, I mentioned on the last show, we talked about Cellcore and their parasite protocols, which on average have about 4 or 5 products that you're using at one time. We wanted to try and not overwhelm you with 4 or 5 or 6 different formulas. But as we looked into this and we looked into the ubiquitous nature of these chemicals and all of the various areas that they impact in the body, we couldn't not do it complete. I guess that's the best way to put it. Like, there are more things we could have done, but what we decided was that by doing these key elements, by adding these key elements in these different supplements, that we were going to give you the very best shot of success when it comes to really balancing things for your body. This protocol and this detoxification portion of the protocol is intertwined. They are 4 different products. You can absolutely use them separately, and it may make sense in some cases to use them separately. But if you want to optimize your results, the combination definitely makes the most sense. So when we talk about those receptors, and we're talking about opening up the ears of the cells so they can hear the hormonal signaling again, we're talking about 3 primary compounds that really, really play a major role here. DIM, D-I-M, indole 3-carbinol, and calcium D-glucarate. I don't get too confused about calcium D-glucarate when we talk about calcification, because the bulk of what we're talking about in calcium D-glucarate is not calcium. But let's get into the very first one. This is receptor clearance and the mechanism of action. DIM, which is a compound that forms when you digest cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, and so on. But the thing is, you have to eat a lot of these vegetables to get a concentrated amount of DIM. And when I say a lot, I mean a half a cup of broccoli has about 2 milligrams of DIM. Cleanse has 200 milligrams of DIM, 100 times as much. So we're talking pounds of vegetables to get the kind of concentration that we put in Cleanse. Why have we put that much in? Doesn't that seem like excess? Well, yeah, frankly, it does seem like excess, except that we have been excessively exposed to these toxic chemicals. And so we need to come in with a bit of a bulldozer to get all this stuff out. And so we put a concentrated amount of DIM in there, a significant amount, to make sure that that happens. What DIM does is absolutely fascinating. It actively promotes the metabolism of estrogen, both your natural estrogens and xenoestrogens, those fake estrogens from the endocrine disrupting chemicals, and it turns them into beneficial metabolites. Your body breaks down estrogen through different pathways. Some of those pathways create metabolites that are protective, anti-inflammatory, and even anti-cancer. Other pathways create metabolites that are pro-inflammatory, DNA damaging, and cancer promoting. DIM shifts estrogen metabolism toward the good pathways and away from the bad ones. It literally changes how your body processes these estrogen-like compounds. But even more important for our purposes, DIM helps clear the xenoestrogens from the estrogen receptors, getting them out of the parking lot, out of the ear or the cell receptor of the cell. It's like it goes in and evicts the squatters, making room for your real hormones to bind and do their job and deliver their messages. This matters for everyone, not just women. Men, you have estrogen receptors too. And when they're occupied by xenoestrogens, you get feminizing effects, fat gain, muscle loss, low testosterone, mood issues. DIM helps to clear those receptors so your body can function properly. The next one is indole-3-carbinol. This is the precursor to DIM. It's what actually is in the cruciferous vegetables before your stomach acid converts it to DIM. We include both because they work synergistically. And I3C, as it's known, has some unique benefits of its own that make it different than DIM. I3C specifically helps with promoting the detoxification of estrogen metabolites, supporting healthy cell growth and division. This is huge in cancer prevention, specifically the hormone-driven cancers like the feminine cancers of uterine, cervical, breast cancer, prostate cancer in men. It reduces the activity of enzymes that create inflammatory estrogen metabolites. It enhances the activity of enzymes that create protective estrogen metabolites. Together, DIM and I3C are like a 1-2 punch for clearing out xenoestrogens and optimizing estrogen metabolism. The third ingredient in this list is calcium D-glucarate. This is one of my favorite compounds, and it's one that, frankly, I misunderstood until recently as I was digging into this more and really trying to understand the individual mechanisms of action for these things. I was just talking to my wife about it the other day, and calcium D-glucarate is a powerhouse all by itself. Remember how I explained that your liver packages up toxins by adding molecules to them in phase 2 detoxification? One of those processes is called glucuronidation. Your liver attaches glucuronic acid to toxins, making them water soluble so that they can be eliminated. Well, there's an enzyme in your gut called beta-glucuronidase that can reverse this process. It essentially clips off the glucuronic acid, releasing the toxin to be reabsorbed. This enzyme is produced by bad bacteria in your gut. And if you have gut dysbiosis, which frankly most of us do, an imbalanced microbiome, then you get a lot of this beta-glucuronidase. Calcium D-glucarate inhibits beta-glucuronidase. It blocks that enzyme, so once a toxin is conjugated, it stays conjugated. It can't be uncoupled and reabsorbed. So if you're familiar with the term binder, when we talk about like parasite cleanses, think of it that way. Think of this conjugation as essentially bile binding to these toxins so that the body can then get rid of them. This beta-glucuronidase actually goes in and unbinds these things, and then we can get toxic all over again. What's really cool about calcium D-glucarate is when it comes to the context of EDCs. It specifically helps with the elimination of xenoestrogens. Studies show it can lower circulating estrogen levels by preventing the reabsorption of estrogen metabolites. So it's actually working on two different levels, preventing the unconjugation of the toxins that your liver has already processed and specifically targeting estrogen and xenoestrogen elimination. So why does this come first? Why is this such a crucial thing? These three compounds, DIM, I3C, and calcium D-glucarate, are working at the receptor level and in the gut before your liver even gets fully involved. They're clearing endocrine disrupting chemicals from hormone receptors, shifting estrogen metabolism toward beneficial pathways, preventing the reabsorption of the estrogen metabolites, getting these compounds moving toward elimination. Once we do that, then the liver can take over and do its job of processing and packaging these toxins for elimination. This is why both liver vitality and endo cleanse work so well together and why they're necessary together. Because while liver vitality has 50 milligrams of DIM, so that people that are using it as just a liver cleanse get some extra benefit with the xenoestrogens, endo cleanse is the powerhouse when it comes to these things. It has all three and at very good high clinical doses that we know actually work. We're not just supporting detox, we're actively clearing the receptors, shifting metabolism, and preventing reabsorption of those toxins. And that's what makes this protocol different and stronger than anything else that I've seen out there. And that's before we even talk about the other two components of the protocol. So let's talk about liver vitality specifically. You understand DIM, I3C, and calcium D-glucarate. They're clearing receptors, preventing reabsorption, and so on. Remember that detox pathway that I talked about, that detoxification, how your liver has to process these EDCs through phase 1 and phase 2, and then they have to move through your bowel and kidneys to actually leave your body? Well, most detox products on the market are incomplete. They might support one phase of liver detox, but not both. Some do support both, or they support the liver, but they ignore the gut. And that's why we add Back on Track into the mix. And we'll talk about Back on Track in just a minute because it's such an important part of all of this. Here's what we discovered when we were researching this. We kept getting results here at Vitality with endocrine cleansing, but they were incomplete results. People would improve, but in many cases, not all the way. And that's when we started adding, and this is before Jen ever came on board to Vitality, we started adding liver detoxification to people's plans, and we started finding, oh, things work much, much better if that liver pathway is open. We started also paying attention to, are they having a regular bowel movement every day to make sure that things are moving through that way? And what we discovered working with actual people doing these actual products, taking these actual products, is that if the bowels were moving, if we detoxified the liver, and if we focused on getting rid of those xenoestrogens, getting them out of the system, then people started to see even greater results. And yet we still had some people that couldn't get everything that they wanted out of this. And that's why a few years ago, I had this idea of, you know what? We need to go bigger and deeper with this. We need to cover all the bases, not just some or most of them. So liver vitality is our comprehensive phase 1 and phase 2 liver support formula. Let me walk you through each ingredient and why it's in there. I won't belabor this. I promise these will be short and sweet, but they matter. Selenium. It's an essential cofactor for glutathione peroxidase. Most people are deficient in selenium and therefore making less glutathione, the master antioxidant that is so critical for proper liver function and liver detoxification. N-acetylcysteine, otherwise known as NAC, it is a direct precursor to glutathione. So with selenium, a 1-2 punch that's very, very powerful and critical to phase 2, which is really where the rubber meets the road when it comes to detoxification. Milk thistle extract. Everybody's heard of milk thistle extract. We know it's the gold standard for liver protection and regeneration. And we use a very high concentration of milk thistle extract. Alpha lipoic acid, which is a powerful antioxidant that protects liver cells during the phase 1 process and helps to regenerate glutathione. So another glutathione boost. Broccoli extract. provides sulforaphane to support phase 2 detoxification pathways. Dandelion root, the oldest and coolest weed in the world. I love dandelion. I actually think they're even pretty, although, not everybody loves them in their lawn. I get it. But this is an amazing thing because it helps to support bile production and bile flow. And bile is how your liver dumps conjugated toxins for elimination. And then Google extract, not Google, the search engine, but Guggul. Google extract. This is what makes liver vitality unique, along with a couple of the other key components. But probably this one is the one you're going to see the least in other liver detox formulas. It's just not included in most of them. It's an Ayurvedic resin extract that has powerful anti-inflammatory effects in the liver and specifically helps with fatty liver disease. And over the last several years, we've had more people coming into Vitality with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease than we've ever seen before. It really is a problem. Our livers need the support. It's a huge, huge problem. And that dysfunction of not being able to grab the excess fat out of the liver and get it out is a big problem. And Google plays a massive role there. Also, Google happens to be fantastic for supporting thyroid function, which is crucial when dealing with EDCs that suppress thyroid activity. I mentioned before, it has a little bit of DIM in there just to support with estrogen metabolism for people that are using liver vitality away from EndoCleanse, which many people will and do. And then red clover flower extract. I love red clover for a variety of reasons. It's great for men. It's great for women. It helps to support hormone balance and has a mild phytoestrogenic effect, which in women can be very, very helpful for things like hot flashes, night sweats, things like that. But red clover is also one of the oldest school of old school blood detoxifiers. And a lot of this activity is happening at the level of the blood, and we want to make sure that things are moving through. So we have a complete picture with selenium and NAC and alpha lipoic acid for glutathione production and function, milk thistle for liver protection and regeneration, broccoli to help with phase 2, dandelion for bile flow, Google for all of the anti-inflammatory and fatty liver support, DIM for estrogen, and red clover for hormone balance. That's what makes liver vitality unique and a really cool and special product. 2 capsules at bedtime or with dinner is what we recommend. We do recommend that you do a minimum of a month. Each bottle's a month supply, and it's already such a huge hit at Vitality that it's now coming out in a 2-month supply. By the time this airs, I think we'll have that size as well, or if not, within a week or two, we'll have it. Regardless, it comes in a 1-month supply and a 2-month supply now, 2 capsules at night or with dinner. And we recommend a minimum of a month. If you haven't ever done a liver cleanse before, if you have any suspicion that you've got some liver dysfunction, or if you just recognize that things are pretty dirty out there and the liver is under attack, it probably makes sense to even do 2 months on the liver vitality. And I'll recommend that a couple of times per year. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water with it as well, because if you're not staying fully hydrated, then your detox pathways pay a price. All right. Now, the next formula, and the one that's going to get probably the most love overall, is EndoCleanse. EndoCleanse is where those big 3 reside: the DIM, the calcium D-glucarate, and the indole-3 carbinol. As I said, all in very potent, effective doses. So this formula has those 3 ingredients in there. Then it also has some additional dandelion, because we want to make sure that bile flow is working, especially in conjunction with the calcium D-glucarate. Those guys are best friends when it comes to this. We also have the red clover extract in there for the same reasons as it is in the liver vitality, and artichoke, which helps to actually stimulate bile production and protect liver cells and support healthy digestion. So artichoke and dandelion work synergistically when it comes to bile. And then, of course, D-glucarate keeps all that conjugation intact. There's also some rosemary in there, which is a powerful antioxidant and actually supports phase 2 liver detoxification, and even has some antimicrobial properties, and black pepper, which helps the whole thing to absorb more efficiently. So EndoCleanse on its own, a mild but decent liver detoxification formula. And the reason EndoCleanse is not a full liver detox is because you can't fit enough in it. So we had to do a separate product. We've got the liver vitality. We have the EndoCleanse. It doesn't make sense for them to be combined into one product and just have you take more capsules. And the reason for that is because some people are going to need to use EndoCleanse long term, particularly if you're on like HRT or TRT. I would recommend it daily, maybe not a full dose, maybe just one capsule instead of two. And I don't love milk thistle every single day. And so I wanted to have a potent, powerful liver detox that could be used periodically, whereas EndoCleanse can be used daily if needed. And what we're typically recommending is at least 3 months on EndoCleanse and at least 1 to 2 months on liver vitality. And you can take those at the same time. So you can start on liver vitality right now and EndoCleanse at the same time. That will help the EndoCleanse to do its job, make sure things aren't recycling, they're moving through phase 2 detox and all that kind of stuff. We recommend 1 to 2 months of liver vitality concurrently with EndoCleanse, but we recommend a minimum of 3 months with EndoCleanse the first time that you use it. When the entire protocol comes out, that's what it will look like. There will be a 3-month supply of EndoCleanse and a shorter supply of liver vitality. And that being said, we wanted to make sure there were liver support and bile support ingredients in EndoCleanse, because you're not always going to be on liver vitality while you're on EndoCleanse, and you do need that extra support. So that's the whole idea. Now, let me share a story that I didn't share yesterday, and I think it matters because it's a real result story, and it's a real result story with not as strong a formula as what we're introducing today. This is prior to the development of EndoCleanse and liver vitality. I had a gentleman who was a very regular customer of mine, still is, I still see him, but back then he was working out a lot, coming in for a lot of protein and creatine and things like that. He was 39 years old and had just gotten remarried. And he wanted to have a child with his new wife, and his testosterone was in the tank. His numbers were under 200 at 39 years old, which is crazy. And this is years ago. This is when I didn't have a lot of people coming in bringing me testosterone numbers. And I wasn't even that familiar with blood labs. And I dug around and looked and thought, oh my gosh, this guy's got testosterone that's like he's a 70-year-old. And so big problem if you're trying to have a baby, right? So I didn't have the expertise. Like I said, I just knew that he needed to detoxify the xenoestrogens to open up the cell receptors. And I understood at that point, because we'd already kind of figured it out, that the liver detox was a big part of that. So what I recommended was a comprehensive liver cleanse, something that we had on the market back then, not in our brand, and an endocrine detox formula. They were both big sellers for me at the time, and I love both formulas. And they were both very much inspiration for what we developed later on with the liver vitality and the EndoCleanse. And in his case, I wanted to also boost testosterone. And so we gave him some key testosterone boosting herbs as well. Now, this guy was religious about these recommendations. He was already exercising consistently, really hitting the gym and the weights. So he was doing the things that you would need to do to promote testosterone production. And he was keeping a pretty careful eye on his testosterone numbers, having him checked about once every quarter. When he came back in, his overall testosterone, between the combination of the testosterone boosting herbs, the liver detox, and the endocrine detox, his numbers were at about 650, from under 200 to 650. That's insane. Now, at 39 years old, I'd like him to have higher testosterone than that. But considering he wasn't doing TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, and was only doing natural stuff, that's a massive increase. That said so much to me. Yes, it was one person. It wasn't quite, I guess you could call it anecdotal because it wasn't a clinical study, but we had the numbers. We had the numbers from 3 months ago, and we had the numbers from today. And it was a massive jump. That taught me a huge lesson as to just how powerful this stuff can be. And it's still one of the stories that I fall back on as one of the biggest reasons why I finally decided to come up with this protocol. Another one, a 29-year-old, 10 years younger, in crisis. His numbers were sub 300. I don't remember exactly what the number was. I think it was high 200s. But that's considered low for someone in my age, in my 50s. This guy was in his 20s. This is a big deal. He was checking his levels every 2 months. He was extremely concerned, as you can imagine. He felt terrible. He was considering pharmaceutical options, but he didn't want to go that route because he was so young for testosterone replacement. I talked to him and I said, look, the first thing you got to do is detox your endocrine system. That's more important than adding things that will boost testosterone. We've got to get your body doing what it can do on its own. And I explained to him the endocrine disrupting chemicals and what to avoid. And I talked to him about how, DIM and indole 3 carbinol and these things work. And I recommended that. 2 months later, at his next blood test, because he had just come in with a fresh blood test, and I don't, make a habit of reviewing blood tests. He just showed me these numbers, but he came in after just barely getting his blood test results back. And 2 months later, he showed me his next blood test results. Now, what's interesting about this one is that this other gentleman was working out, hitting the gym hard, the 39-year-old. And I put him on multiple products. I think he was on 2 or maybe even 3 different formulas for testosterone boosting. So he was hitting it very, very hard. And he went, all the way up to that 650 number. This other gentleman specifically told me, he said, I want to do this like one thing at a time. I need to understand what's working. And so I'm willing to do this, test it in a couple months, and then do that, test it in a couple months, that kind of thing. That was the process he wanted to go through. And I said, okay, let's work through that process. In 2 months, with liver detoxification and endocrine detoxification, his numbers had risen by 200 points. What's wild about that is there's nothing in those formulas that I recommended. I still remember exactly what I recommended to him that was pro-testosterone at all. Nothing that would naturally boost testosterone production or testosterone numbers. This was just clearing the plate and letting the body do what the body wants to do. Really pretty amazing. The third success story I want to share with you was a female. Now, I will say this. I shared the 2 male stories because numbers impress, numbers matter. We have real clinical evidence there. But if I had to guess, I probably sell about 60% of endocrine detoxification products to women and 40% to men. There's simply less men paying attention to it. And in many cases, they don't have as strong a symptomology, the PMS symptoms, the hot flashes, night sweats, and things like that. So I'm only sharing one woman's story, but there are so many. This is just one of the ones that really is the most compelling for me. This woman was also a very regular customer. She still is. I see her at least every couple of months here at Vitality. And this is about close to 15 years ago. I was pretty much a novice at this point, trying to help her out. I knew the bare minimum when it comes to endocrine detoxification, but I knew it was critical. And she came to me and she said, I am literally soaking through my pajamas and my bed sheets every night, at least once, if not twice, having to get up, change my bed sheets and change my pajamas. And it is impacting me, driving me insane, and really creating issues with our marriage. So, 2 things. The 2 things I understood back then were endocrine detox and liver detox. But with her, I also did add herbs like black cohosh to help to reduce hot flashes because she needed a response right now. Couldn't wait for just detoxification to take place. 6 weeks later, she came in for another appointment, and she hadn't sweat through her pajamas or sheets in over 3 weeks at that point. So it took about 3 weeks for this to kick in and start doing its thing. Over time, she actually didn't need the hot flash herbs anymore at all. She just kept rolling with endocrine detoxification. She didn't even use the liver detox after, I think, 3 months is what we did, if I remember correctly. It's a long time ago. I had her doing the endocrine detox daily because she was really, really struggling. But we reduced the dose to a maintenance dose of just 1 capsule a day when that formula originally started, I think, on 3 capsules a day. And then we just did periodic liver detox about every 6 months for a month. Every time I see her 15 plus years later, which is at least 3 or 4 times a year I see her in here, she comes in, she gives me a big, huge hug. She tells me that I saved her life. It's like a broken record, and I love it every single time. She's such a sweetheart. She tells me how much she loves me, how much she loves what we do at Vitality, and how valuable we are in her community. Last time she was here, she asked me specifically, she said, you don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon, right, Jared? You're not just going to retire on me and sell this place. She's so concerned. But my point with all these stories is just to tell you that This really works. And what I love about these stories is they're old stories about old formulas that I believe have been improved on dramatically. And they're only, for the most part, liver and endo. But we've created something so much more comprehensive to really change the game for you. So with EndoCleanse, 2 capsules once daily is going to typically be your dose, or 1 capsule in the morning and 1 capsule in the night. I don't recommend more than that initially, but if you need more support after you've been on it for a few weeks, you can double that dose. You can go up to 4 capsules per day if you need it and you're really struggling. But most people, since EndoCleanse was released 9 months ago now, or 10 months ago, something like that, it's been out most of this year, are doing just great at 2 capsules per day. If you're sensitive, you can actually start with even just 1 capsule a day and 1 capsule of liver vitality, work your way up once you determine that everything is good. We always recommend drinking plenty of water with it again. And I've already hit this, but I'll hit it again. Make sure you're having at least 1 daily bowel movement, preferably 2. That's a critical thing. If you're not, call us or get on our chat and we'll help you figure out how to make sure we're doing that for you as well. So the thing is basically this: liver vitality and EndoCleanse are designed to work together. They're a team. EndoCleanse clears the xenoestrogens receptors and prevents their reabsorption in the gut. Liver vitality processes what EndoCleanse has mobilized through comprehensive phase 1 and phase 2 support. Together, they address the complete detoxification pathway from receptor clearance through liver processing to elimination. This is why we so strongly recommend using them together. Now, this is where things get a little bit different. Back on track. Now, I shared with you those 3 success stories. There's 100 more that I could potentially share with you. Those are just 3 that have really stuck with me, that are in some cases people that have become friends of mine, and that I know the details of their health pretty intimately. But when Jen and I were putting this together and we were talking about the protocol, as I said at the top of the show, we were trying to decide, okay, what belongs and what doesn't belong, and what can we put in the protocol that is like a must-have versus what we might recommend as something you could add in if you need more support. And Back on Track ended up being kind of on the fence for a minute there, trying to decide, does it belong in the protocol or is it something we're just going to recommend? Because Back on Track represents 2 of my vital 5, digestive enzymes and probiotics. So many people listening to this show, perhaps you, are already using Back on Track or using probiotics and digestive enzymes anyway. But as we started digging in, it was so clear that if we're not paying attention to the gut microbiome, we are missing a massive part of this equation. So the gut matters for 1,000 reasons. We all know that. The gut-brain connection, the immune system, digestion, and so on. But if your microbiome is out of balance and you're not digesting food properly, none of this works like it should. None of the detox stuff works like it should. Your gut is literally the foundation of detoxification. That's where most of it leaves from. And that's where Back on Track comes in. And I need to mention just how much we loved Back on Track before it ever became part of this protocol. I believe I mentioned on the last show, though, that we upgraded and updated Back on Track once we decided to add it to this protocol to make sure that it was not just an awesome digestive health product, but also an awesome endocrine detoxification and reboosting formula as well. So Back on Track has received what I believe is its 3rd or 4th overhaul in the something like 15, 16 years that it's been on the market, and it is better than ever. It is our most comprehensive digestive health formula that addresses 3 critical aspects of gut health: digestion, microbial balance, and gut lining health. The dosing is just 1 capsule per meal. And in 1 capsule per meal, you get some really awesome benefits. There's a comprehensive digestive enzyme blend that breaks down all major food categories. Why this matters for detoxification is simple. It's because if you're not properly breaking down your food, you're creating more work for your already overburdened system. Undigested food particles cause inflammation, feed bad bacteria, and create additional toxic burden. Plus, many nutrients your liver needs for detoxification come from your food. So if you're not digesting properly, you're not extracting those nutrients, and therefore you're giving your liver less of the good stuff that it needs to actually do its job. So that's really, really important. The probiotics in Back on Track are a combination of 3 spores and 1 human strain probiotic. And this is where I think it gets really interesting for hormone health. These beneficial bacteria between them help to prevent the growth of bad bacteria that produce that beta glucuronidase that I was talking about, that enzyme that unconjugates toxins. They support a healthy gut lining, which prevents toxins from being reabsorbed back into the bloodstream and therefore reseeding in other cells and creating other havoc in the body. And here's the key: they directly influence hormone metabolism. Your gut microbiome plays a massive role in estrogen metabolism. In fact, there's something called the estrobolome. Have you heard of that? Estrobolome. It's the collection of gut bacteria that metabolize estrogen. These bacteria produce enzymes that can either activate or deactivate estrogens. If your microbiome is unhealthy, you can't metabolize estrogen properly, even if your liver is doing everything right. The estrobolome can actually increase or decrease circulating estrogen levels by up to 40%. That is huge. This is why gut health is non-negotiable for hormone balance. But there's another crucial issue: deconjugation from beta glucuronidase. The 4 specific strains in Back on Track, Lactobacillus reuteri, Bacillus subtilis, Lactospore, and Bacillus clausii, these strains don't produce beta glucuronidase. Instead, they crowd out the bacteria that do. They support a healthy gut lining to prevent toxin reabsorption, and they directly support hormone production, particularly testosterone, in both men and women. There are multiple studies on L-reuteri specifically showing that it actually boosts testosterone. Now, those studies have been done in animals up to this point. They've not been replicated in humans, but they haven't tried to replicate them in humans yet. And there's a really good chance we're going to see similar results in humans. In addition to this, you've got things that just help to calm down the inflammation in the gut: papaya, ginger, peppermint, fennel. That's why Back on Track is such a superstar. It's why it's my favorite formula. It's Jen's favorite formula. It's my son Bridger's favorite formula. We love Back on Track. And if you've heard me talk about Jen's story, you know it's a part of the reason that the two of us got together. So an amazing formula for these purposes. 1 capsule per meal. Whether you're doing endocrine detoxification or not, you got to be on Back on Track. I love this product. It'll help you break down your food better, make you feel lighter after meals, less heaviness, less bloating, less gassiness, more regularity, all of those things. At least your 2 biggest meals of the day, 1 capsule of Back on Track while you're doing the Endo protocol will improve things dramatically. The last formula is the Vital D3K2. I did an entire show on this formula not too long ago, and I actually did a whole show on Back on Track too. So we'll link those shows for you if you want to dig a little deeper on those. But now that we've talked about getting endocrine disrupting chemicals out of your body, we have to talk about calcification. And this, again, comes back around to: how many things are we going to put in this protocol? We don't want to overwhelm people, but we don't want to underperform with the results that we're trying to achieve either. And that's where this 4th formula comes in. It was the last thing that we introduced into the protocol, even though we have 3 formulas coming up. The D3K2 formula was frankly easier to produce and figure out, and so it hit the market sooner, and it also plays a more vital role in the detoxification part, so it makes sense to have it on the front end, the detoxification part of the protocol. So we mentioned the calcification crisis, the pineal gland calcifying from fluoride, your arteries calcifying from misplaced calcium, your joints, your organs, your glands, and so on. What most people don't understand about calcium is that calcium itself is really not the problem. We need calcium. Now, some of us are getting too much calcium. That's another story for another day, and I've talked about that in multiple other episodes. Your bones need it. Your teeth need it. Your muscles and your nerves need calcium. The problem is getting calcium where it's supposed to go and keeping it out of places that it shouldn't. And that's entirely dependent on having the right cofactors, specifically vitamin K2 and vitamin D3 and magnesium, which, by the way, I so badly wanted to put magnesium bisglycinate in this protocol. I did not do it because I am counting on you taking that anyway, because it is such a critical element. It stands at the top of my Vital 5. You've got to be on it. So it's not included in the protocol, but if you aren't on it, please listen to my Magnesium User's Guide episode and get on it, because it'll help your health in so many different ways. Let me break this down, though. When I developed the D3K2 formula, I was working on it prior to working on this protocol. And it took a long time to produce, not because it was complicated, it's actually pretty simple, but because vitamin D3 and K2 don't take up much space, like actual physical real estate inside of a capsule, just a little bit. And so it was like, well, what else are we going to put in the capsule? Are we just going to put a filler in there? Because you can put a filler in there. You have to put something. Otherwise, you got this little bit of powder shaking around in a big capsule. Most companies put fillers. Fillers are cheap. They help with the flow. They make machines run smoother and all that kind of stuff. I don't like fillers. I use them if I have to, more because of flow agent than filler. But like when I created Vital C 5 years ago, and we had space in that capsule, we filled it up with 300 milligrams of olive leaf extract, because why not? It was an immune system boosting formula, and olive leaf is great for the immune system. So in this one, I dug around and I dug around and I dug around and I hemmed and I hawed, and I finally came up with something that I thought made perfect sense. And I could not be happier with how these formulas are developed. And I say these formulas because there are two. There's a high potency and an original. If you're not taking vitamin D3 or K2 from other sources, namely, if you're not taking Ultimate Vitality Multi, then you want the high potency formula. But if you are taking the Ultimate Vitality Multi, you're getting a good dose of D3 and K2 for daily use. But for the purposes of what we're talking about with endocrine disruption, we need more. And so we'll recommend the original strength, the 2500 and 180 microgram D3K2. But what else is in it? Two additional ingredients that matter a ton: boron and silica. Let me go through each ingredient individually. Vitamin D3, most people know about this. You've probably heard a bunch. We won't go too much into it, but basically vitamin D, huge for calcium absorption from your gut, and huge for the immune system, and huge for anti-cancer and a lot of other things. But the big issue with vitamin D3 is that because it's so efficient at getting calcium from the gut into the bloodstream, but does not direct it where it needs to go, it needs support. And that's where vitamin K2 comes in. Vitamin K2 is the foreman, the shuttle, whatever you want to call it, that gets the calcium where it goes, out of the kidneys, out of the arteries, out of the soft tissues, out of the pineal gland, and so on to where it goes. So really, really critical stuff. And what also makes our Vital D3K2 so unique is the potency. The high potency one has 360 micrograms of K2. That is so important because when you look at the studies, and I've read so many studies on D3 and K2, specifically K2, and they start at like 90 micrograms and they go all the way up to about 720 micrograms. The sweet spot from the studies that are currently available is really pretty simple. It's about 360 micrograms. And that's exactly what's in the high potency Vital D3 K2. And that's exactly how much K2 you get if you take the Ultimate Vitality Multi and the original strength vitamin D3 and K2. So we've got clinically proven doses, way more than what is in most of the other K2 formulas on the market. Boron. This trace mineral helps your body metabolize vitamin D and magnesium more effectively, reduces calcium loss through the urine, and has been shown to increase estrogen and testosterone production naturally. The good hormones, not those chemical hormones. So boron makes all kinds of sense, and most of us are deficient in it. And then silica from bamboo. This is the one that gets me excited about this formula. When I finally came up with the idea of silica, and I had to dig and dig and dig to figure out what would fit and make sense in this capsule, I got really, really pumped up. It's essential for collagen production, the protein matrix that calcium deposits onto in your bones. When silica levels are adequate, calcium preferentially deposits in bones. When silica is deficient, calcium tends to deposit in soft tissues. Silica also inhibits aluminum absorption and helps the body get rid of excess aluminum, which is important for your brain as well. So, 1 capsule per day of either the high potency, if you're not on another source of D3 or K2, or the original strength, if you are on the Ultimate Vitality Multi. That's what we're recommending there. So that's the combination, and those 4 formulas matter. They are truly comprehensive. As much as we knew how to make them, I'm going to tell you right now, I reserve the right to change these formulas as new research comes out or comes to my attention. We may tweak Endo Cleanse, we may tweak Liver Vitality, we may continue to tweak Back on Track, which has already been tweaked 3 or 4 times. We keep trying to make improvements. One of the coolest things about being the guy that runs Vitality Nutrition, the supplement brand, is that we're small, we're light on our feet. We got 10 people on our team, and we don't order massive quantities of bottles and labels that we have to wait for 3 years to get rid of. We move fast when we want to make an adjustment. Perfect example is we're working on our multivitamin right now. We decided we wanted to make a couple of changes, and we only order a few thousand labels at a time, so we can do that. We can make the moves quickly. So as these formulas come along, we will adjust as it makes sense to adjust. But I am here to tell you that I truly believe that the combination of Liver Vitality, Endo Cleanse, Back on Track, and Vital D3 and K2 will be game changers for you. And I'm confident saying you, even though I'm not looking you in the face. I don't know if you're a man or a woman. I don't know what age you are or what your health status is. I'm confident this is a good combination for you because you are afflicted with these chemical toxins. We all are. None of us are escaping it. This is universal. This is perhaps more universal than my Vital 5 when I think about it. And we developed it in a way to try to optimize it for as high a percentage of people as we possibly can. I cannot wait for you to try it. I can't wait for you to see just in the first couple of weeks that you may start feeling better. And that by weeks 3 and 4, you're seeing significant shifts. And if you're a woman who's still having a cycle, that second period is almost always dramatically better than the first one once you started on this protocol. It's awesome what we see. And in 3 months, things are just improving and improving and improving. It is not a quick fix. It's not a one-time thing because these chemicals are coming in all the time. You can do your part to not toxify your system by your own choices. But as I described at the top of the last show, it's thrust upon us whether we want it or not. So I hope that these 2 episodes have been very empowering to you. I hope they have not been overwhelming. I've tried to dial in and give you all the details without giving you too much stuff to think about. I don't know if I succeeded or not. You'll have to let me know. But I will say this. There are more episodes coming on this topic. I hope that sounds good and not like a negative to you, but we are going to have an episode where we talk about avoidance, maybe a couple of episodes. We're going to talk about what to replace the things you're avoiding with. We're going to get into the boosting of the endocrine system as soon as those formulas are ready for us to talk about. And you are going to have, if you stick with us here on Vitality Radio, me and my wife, who is incredibly involved in this whole process of building this protocol as well, what you'll find is that you'll have a comprehensive roadmap towards hormonal optimization through natural means. That is our goal. That is our purpose right now at Vitality Radio. It is the majority of where my thoughts are at this moment, trying to figure all this stuff out to help not just you, but me, my family, my children. I hope it's been beneficial to you. If you have questions, you know what to do. Call us 801-292-6662. That's 801-292-6662, or hit us up online at vitalitynutrition.com. Thank you so much for listening to me. This has been Vitality Radio, and I'll be back with you next week. Thanks for listening to the Vitality Radio podcast. If this episode helped you, follow the show, share it with someone, and explore trusted education and resources at vitalitynutrition.com. See you next time.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Vitality Radio. Just a reminder that this podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast has not been evaluated by the FDA. This podcast is provided with the understanding that the information shared is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. This podcast is not a substitute for professional care by a medical professional. Thank you.